What's up, guys? This is Coach Grant with First Down Training, and today we're going to be breaking down some of the biggest mistakes that all wide receivers need to be aware of and that wide receivers make constantly that you obviously got to avoid. So we're going to be talking about this route here first from the Senior Bowl, where we have a DB who's lined up like inside shade, probably about like maybe 2 to 3 yards off. Wide receivers obviously off the ball, which adds to that, but he has to run like just a simple 5-yard in, right? So a short route, 5-yard in, but we have a DB who's inside shade. How we can tell this DB's inside shade anytime that you're watching film as a wide receiver is you want to pay attention to the midline of his body, aka like an imaginary line that goes down the center of him. If that midline is even with the wide receiver's like front foot or inside foot, I guess you should say, that means that he has inside leverage. So he doesn't want me to run the exact route that I have to run, which is the 5-yard in. So a lot of times what wide receivers will do is that anytime they have to run an inside breaking route, they feel that they must have an inside release. That's not the case, you guys, and that's one of the biggest mistakes that receivers will make. What they think is I have to get to this DB's like inside hip so I could lean into him and break off, but this DB's whole responsibility is not to let us do that. So what this wide receiver does is he makes the cardinal mistake of trying to force the inside release. But you see where his route, like, yes, he caught the ball, or did he catch the ball here? Yeah, he caught the ball, but like he's on the opposite hash. Now, this is one-on-one, so there are not any other receivers on the field running crossing routes, running a dig, running a post. There aren't linebackers over to the inside of the field. There isn't an offensive line. Like, guys, in a real game, you can't do this because there's spacing on every single play that's required. Like, let's say it was like just like as simple as like levels concept, right? Where let's say this is the slot receiver and he's got a 5-yard in. Let's say the outside receiver's got a 10-yard in. This 5-yard in has to look like this. It can't be that route because that route is not what the quarterback is looking for. That's not going to set up other routes, not going to open up other routes, not going to pull other defenders off of certain things. So guys, you have to make it look exactly like how it's drawn up. So what this wide receiver should have done is attack this DB's outside shoulder and outside hip and work something called a diamond release. A diamond release is where you would take 3 hard steps at this DB's outside shoulder, outside hip. You'd sell vertical, and the goal would be to get this DB to open up his hips, think they were running deep, and then we'd cut under him. And again, maybe there's some contact at the break. Maybe you have to throw him by with your inside hand, but you have to understand spacing on plays. If you sacrifice spacing just to run like a comfortable break, and it's like not the uncomfortable throw by, cut under the DB, guys, you have to make quarterback friendly routes and spacing friendly routes when you run them. That's one of the biggest mistakes that receivers can make. Now, that brings me to mistake number 2 here from Tyreek Hill. Now, I think we all know what happens to Tyreek Hill on this play, but this could have been easily avoided. How could he have avoided this? Now, before we get into this, guys, if you're a wide receiver watching this video or a quarterback and you would like to train with myself and my staff of coaches this offseason, we are going to be traveling out to 11 more states across the entire country here for 2-day-long QB and wide receiver training camps. So, guys, go to that very first link in the description below if you would like to sign up and if you're local to one of these cities that we have listed here. So, our next camp, guys, is going to be in Austin, Texas. That camp is completely sold out because, again, guys, all these camps will sell out. Our first 5 camps sold out because it's just, we limit spots. We don't try to have like anybody and everybody just show up. We limit spots so each athlete could get individualized coaching. We don't have these real big groups. It's honestly, guys, a lot of individualized training for 2 full days, 4 hours each day. So all the remaining camps where we have spots will sell out by March 1st. We have like probably 5 to 6 spots remaining in each one of these camps, you guys. So guys, go to that very first link in the description below if you would like to sign up. Again, we're coming out to Vegas, Seattle, Chicago, Newark, Birmingham, Houston, Boston, Columbus, Boise, and Los Angeles. So, fellas, very first link in that description below. We would love to have you out. Let's get to the second mistake here in this video from Tyreek Hill. So, I think, like I said, we all know what happens in this play. Like, everybody saw this happen from 2 years ago where Tyreek Hill got jammed off the ball. Obviously, like, freezing cold game, snow on the ground, not the best footing. But this is just a perfect example of why wide receivers need to not have their hands super low and super relaxed when they're facing press. If it's against zone coverage and you want to do this with your hands, fine by me. Like, I don't have any issue. But the one thing that bothers me to no end is when wide receivers have their hands rested on their quads. It's not so often that it's this cold where you need to have your hands in the hand warmer. So I don't think wide receivers make that mistake all that often. But wide receivers will rest their hands on their knees. Some wide receivers do that like stupid X looking thing with their hands across their knees. Like, guys, we can't do that because if a DB, a smart DB, sees us doing that, he is going to just choke us right off the line of scrimmage because when your hands are low like that, you're going to have to react and try to bring them up or separate your hands out before you bring them up, like if your hands are crossed on your quad. So, guys, let's just try to have my hands in a relaxed position, but a position ready to fight. So, like, what I would say that looks like I'm not one of those guys that's going to say you need to have your hands up by your chest, almost like you look like a boxer and you're real tense up top. Because when you're real tense with your upper body, I feel like you have less range of motion and you're exerting more energy with your upper body when you're tense. You want to be relaxed so you have more range of motion. You're not exerting a ton of energy when you hand fight. Because again, it's like the same thing in like fighting, right? You never want to fight super tense and hold your breath while you throw punches because you're going to gas out because you're exerting too much energy. It's like you're straining yourself. Same thing when you're hand fighting off the line. Let's have my hands up by my like I would say like slightly below my chest, probably by my number. Be nice and relaxed with our shoulders and just be ready to fight. Because I feel like if we have that, this whole situation could have been avoided, especially for you younger guys that get jammed by bigger and more physical DBs. Now, next mistake here that we're going to talk about has to do with at the top of the route. So the thing is, guys, whenever we are facing a DB who's in man coverage, whether he's an off man, whether he's in catch man like how he is right now, which is like 2 to 3 yards away, or whether he's press man right up on the ball, especially at this level. This is high-level college ball, South Florida football. Like, again, guys, they're going to be disciplined DBs. And those DBs, when they're disciplined, their eyes are going to be keyed in on your hips. That's what's going to tell them everything about what you were doing. Now, as a wide receiver, I could use that to my advantage. Like, especially if I'm working like a press release, like let's say I want to give a move to the inside, I could really try to sell with my hip, throw my hip and upper body to the inside to get this DB to move. That's at least what I teach my wide receivers. Now, top of the route, it also matters because this wide receiver is going to be running a route called a stop route, which is essentially just like a deeper hitch route. A hitch route is obviously like 6 to 5 yards where you just put the brakes on and stop, and then that quarterback puts that ball on your outside shoulder. Just imagine that just like 10 to 12 yards downfield. So this receiver's running a stop route. But the thing is, guys, is the slower I drop my hips, the more time the DB has to react. So I'll play at full speed and we'll talk about why this is bad. So pretty decent outside release, but you see how slow his hips are. Right? And this clip is actually sped up. I think it's sped up because this was on like this DB's highlight tape. So I think he's trying to make him look a little bit faster or make himself look a little bit faster than what he is. But even with it sped up, you see how this wide receiver kind of has this slow sink of his hips and he takes a bunch of steps. All that does is give this DB more time to react. Something you want to think about as a wide receiver when you break down or when you're trying to change direction is that you don't want to use your feet to slow you down. You want to use your hips and a drop in your center of gravity to slow you down. So you were getting to the break point right here, and you see how he's like, it's almost like he's stepping really hard, but he's not dropping his body language enough. It's kind of this like slow sink of his hips and a bunch of steps. Again, guys, if a DB sees your hips start to drop, he starts to drop. So the faster I can drop, the less time he has to recover, and the less time he has to react on my break. So guys, instead of like stepping hard and sinking your hips, I want a violent drop. I tell my wide receivers, you want to try to get your chin as quickly as you can to your knee. And you almost want to think of it, it's like an elevator, you guys. Like it just drops straight down, but it's like the elevator broke. It's at the top floor, the elevator broke, and it just drops straight down as quickly as possible. Because when you do that, it's less time for him to react. And it's going to help you get more space. But don't be that guy that takes choppy steps. Don't use your feet to slow down. Change that center of gravity as fast as possible to slow down to avoid this from happening.